The following program was produced by Community Producer. The content, views, and opinions expressed are the sole responsibility of the community producer and do not reflect Malden Access Television, the City of Malden, or your cable provider. MATV welcomes your comments. Call us at 781-321-6400 or email us at access@matv.org.
Good afternoon, everyone, and today our topic will deal with the Syrian crisis. We will be dealing with three areas. This is a complicated topic, but we will focus on 3 points. The first point will deal with the human rights violations in Syria. This is a big and hot issue that's been going on actually for 2 years, and we believe that it's the time to talk about it, and it's the time to try to make a difference in it. And the second area that we will deal with is regarding the suffering of the Syrian refugees, and this will be the main part of the Syrian refugees is in Lebanon, so I would focus on it. And of course we're going to be touching on the Syrian refugees in other countries. And the third part of this show will deal with the recommendations on how to end this conflict in Syria. What are the prospects? How should we approach it? But before we get deep in the discussion, I want to have the other panels, the panels start to identify themselves, and I would start with Mr. Asil.
My name is Asil Ma'araj. I am originally from Iraq. I'm a student at Suffolk University doing my undergraduate in international affairs and economics. I think I will talk a little bit from a personal experience about refugees. I was a refugee myself for 4 years in Jordan, Iraqi refugee. So I think it's a very interesting topic, and it's we will see it on the headlines for a long time, because it's an ongoing civil war and it's going to take a long time. Professor?
Yes. Thank you. My name is Robert Laffey. I'm a professor in the political science government department at Suffolk University. I teach international relations.
Mr. Omar?
My name is Omar Ocampo. I'm a graduate student at the Merrick University in Cairo. I'm getting my master's in political science with a concentration on international affairs, and my another area of concentration is humanitarian intervention.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to give a background. I would like to give a background, just a brief background on this. First of all, I would say that currently Syria represents a home for insurgency, and this is something has been brought up even by the CIA. The CIA is even talking about it and is considering it seriously, and I want to get to that in a few minutes. Also, I would say that the extremists are taking a big control in Syria, and specifically Al-Qaeda openly declared that it's trying to make an Islamic State in Iraq. Now, the dangerous side of this scenario is that Al-Qaeda is an international organization that is capable of drawing from its resources, from its pool of resources internationally, and for example, it could draw from its international resources it could get well-trained fighters, weapons, funds. All of that is available for it. Plus, it's getting the international support from even countries. Officially, countries are supporting extremists. This is a big issue. Now, the other angle on this is that the conflict is taking a sectarian and religious dimension, which has the potential to lead Syria into even worse situation and even more intense civil war. And like I said earlier, the CIA is taking this seriously. Even the CIA director, Michael Morrell, said in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, said that overthrowing Mr. or President Bashar al-Assad could lead to a tough situation, and Al-Qaeda, and actually that Al-Qaeda will take control in, and even it would pose a national security threat to the U.S. Now, I would like actually to say that there are a lot of human rights violations in Syria, and we don't want to go too much into details. We just for the sake of time, and we could just briefly say that there has been an excessive use of force. There has been intentional targeting of the wounded and health workers. There has been massacres, and regarding this point, actually, I would like to point out that on June 4th of this year, the UN actually declared that over 17 incidents potentially meeting the definition of massacre were recorded. This is an important announcement by the UN, and there has another point in this, another type of human rights violation is that the war crimes and sentencing without a due, and sentencing with execution without a due process. And there has been sieges on cities like Nubul and Zahra, which are Shia cities. So this speaks to the speaks to the sectarian violence and sectarian side of it. There has been also sexual violence and a lot of issues going on around that. Even journalists are not immune from the sexual violence. Now, I would like to start with Professor Lafi. I would like to pose this question to him. It's going to be dealing with the legal framework on this issue. Now, what are the legal steps that could be taken under international law? Now, some suggest taking President Assad to the International Court of Justice, regardless of the fact or of the strong criticisms on this on the ICJ, and like for example, some would say that it's politicalized, and would bring a lot of issues regarding it. However, the problem in this is that the principle of justice requires the crimes made by or committed by the opposition to be brought in front of justice as well. We have to be balanced. So how could you actualize this idea or this plan on the ground with divided opposition that has no clear leadership?
Yeah, the opposition to the Assad regime doesn't have a clear leadership. There are very many factions. But to get back to your initial question regarding the International Court of Justice, I think we're going to have to wait until we see how this ends, and everyone hopes that the fighting and the carnage will end as soon as possible. What the situation is on the ground. What is the power balance? We know that the opponents of the Assad regime would love tomorrow to bring Assad before the International Court of Justice. And I think you did mention the opposition from many of the states, and maybe we could name some of the states, the United States, and then in the Arab world, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, to name a few, Turkey now. Not initially. They tried to mediate the situation and unfortunately wasn't able to work. The Assad regime has many faults. It has been a brutal dictatorship for many years. We know that. However, although the conflict began with peaceful demonstrations on the part of the people, and it has always been an opposition in Syria to the regime, but it has always been managed by the regime. But this time it was different. And after several months of more, in terms of low-level violence, demonstrations, then it began to become an armed insurgency on the part of the people. And we're in this situation now in which, as you mentioned, it's we've seen the religious factor come into play, and people have to make up their minds. Right now, they're on which side they want to be, and there are so many factors that go into that. There are many people in Syria who support the regime, not out of their love for the regime, but because of where they're located and
fear of
their connections.
uncertainty.
Exactly.
And they're not sure. That's the key question right there.
What will
If
happen after?
After.
Well, I mean,
After the fall of
The future is not
the
clear.
future is.
And just to a little remark on your saying that the demonstrations did start peacefully, that's true. However, I would like to use Mr. Haytham Manna, who is a leader in the opposition, and he said that there are external powers. He did not name them. He said that openly that they offered weapons to the opposition from the first 10 days of the demonstrations, which shows that there is an agenda already that's trying to push the country into a certain way. But I want to ask Mr. Asil, what do you think the role of the international civil society in ending human rights violations in Syria?
Am I getting this question?
Yes.
No, I think no. I mean, it was related to the question to the professor, and it was about law. What can law do? What can
Okay, so you'd like to
no.
elaborate
I will
on
answer
that.
it.
Okay.
What will law do? In international affairs, it's a very realist game, and I'm a little bit realist too. So, I mean, international law or international community. You're talking about the uprising or the people who bring Assad to the international court. That's just like childish dreams. That's how I think about
It's
it.
very idealistic.
It is now. It's a fight to the death. That's what civil war means. It is literally, it's a fight between two groups of people until one is finished. That's what happened here in America too.
Well, okay. So, do you what are the obstacles? I would pose this question to Mr. Omar. What are the obstacles that impede forming civil movement that call for ending foreign interference in the conflict and encourage dialogue that has the potential to make Geneva II conference a success? So we could be pushing for a civil rights, for a civil movement to encourage the involved parties to make Geneva conference as a successful one. And this is not idealistic approach. It has its roots. It has its roots in the classical realism school of thought. So what classical realism would say on this scale, let me just briefly say, classical realism is a school of thought of political science that takes pragmatic approach toward matters. So classical realism would say, all right, we should be having dialogue. We should be pushing for a dialogue. So what is the role of the civil society in this? International civil society.
Well, I think the international civil society, one of the first steps it needs to take is that they need to get rid of the preconditions in order to jumpstart the talks. Because a lot of times, people in the opposition would say, we won't have talks unless Assad steps down. And I think that is a very, very unrealistic goal, because he's the main negotiator for the other side. Assad, on the other hand, I think he needs to come to realize that the opposition are not all terrorists, because he has successfully sold the idea that everyone in the opposition are extremists, fundamentalists. So therefore, I think that the role of civil society is to get both of them at the table without any preconditions, and therefore you can start real goals for diplomacy. And I think also that you need to have some weight behind that. You need Russian support, you need U.S. support, and other mediators in order for people to, so it can give leverage to the actual talks.
Mm-hmm. Trying to reach a comprehensive deal.
Yeah.
Would you like to elaborate more on that?
I was just going to say, I don't think we've reached that point yet where the parties will sit down, because
I agree.
right now both parties are attempting to get a stronger hand vis-a-vis
On
the
the
other
ground.
party. They want more leverage so that when they sit down, they can achieve.
Yeah, no,
And right now there is, in Syria, when we speak, there is no civil society. The civil society is trying to survive
exactly.
and live to begin with. And a civil society in other countries, I think we mentioned, from the beginning, the United States said that Assad has to go. We want to see regime change. So most Americans see news, and that's filtered through God only knows what. And so here in the United States, we see the good guys and the bad guys, but there are no such thing. There are bad guys on each side.
I agree.
Well, the problem even in this is that Mr. Ahmad Al-Jarba, who said that I am open to sitting down with Assad and the regime without preconditions. However, a few days later, he revoked his announcement and said, no, I'll back up, and I will not sit down with Assad. So this shows that there are external hands also pushing the opposition, for example, not to sit down on the table. Now, just for the time's sake, let's move on to the next area, which deals with the Syrian refugees. Although there are billions of dollars are being allocated to support Syrian refugees in Lebanon, in Jordan, Turkey, Iraq. However, these refugees still live in